Okay, let's move on to the Urbana City Council meeting. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Bowersox,
Present.
Garrick,
Here.
Lewis,
Here.
Marlin. Here. Roberts,
Here.
Smythe, Stevenson. Present. Mayor Pressing.
Here. The first item of business is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. That would be for December 7th.
Seconded.
Okay, motion by Heather Stevenson, seconded by Dennis Roberts. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to petitions and communications. And this is the time when all the people who signed the forms can speak, because the next topic up is the long-range transportation plan. So, the first person I have is Steve Brewer. Steve here? Would you like to come up? The microphone is that little black mouse-looking thing on there. Just take a seat there. Yes, you're on television.
Oh, no.
You are. So be on your best behavior, please.
I will, thank you.
And please state your name and address and keep your remarks to no longer than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Brewer. I'm the business agent for the plumbers and the pipe fitters, local in Champaign. My residence would be Bonneville, my office Savoy. I'm also the vice president of the East Central Illinois Building Trades Council, and I'm here tonight to represent all the building trades crafts. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important issue. I will be brief. Just before I left home, my family from Virginia finally made it, and I would love to go home and play with my grandkids. I speak in support of the long-range transportation plan, which includes Olympian Drive. Olympian Drive is a $28 million project, and it represents jobs that are sorely needed in the construction industry, with over 30% unemployment throughout the building trades, some as high as 50% right now. It's very important not only to those few crafts that are going to be involved in building the highways or the streets, the roads. It's also important long range, the construction that it should bring to the area along the new roads. Most large cities that I've been to, I'm sure that you've all been to, have some sort of loop around the city to relieve congestion. If you drive in Champaign, it's already there. It's coming here. You've got great new areas out in Urbana. You're going to have the gridlock that's facing Champaign right now. This loop can alleviate a lot of that traffic, people trying to get from one side of town to the other. If they're in the south or in the north, they can jump on the loop, be it Curtis Road or Olympian, and miss the inner city congestion. I think that along with the construction dollars that are sorely needed, it will be jobs that are going to be sorely needed. I know there's the argument that West Champaign extended Olympia Drive for Christie Clinic, and Christie Clinic then decided to build in another location. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of that over the years. Somebody's going to build in that area. It's a great area. It's got great access. That's not going to be a problem. I'm not saying that this stuff happens overnight. It won't happen overnight, but I think what we need to do as civic leaders is think about the future. And that is our children and grandchildren, and the fact that we need to provide them with the opportunity to grow and prosper in this area. I think that if we do not make the steps and take the steps that will allow this, we're making a huge, huge mistake for the future. I also believe that it's very important for the officials that we elect to help us govern our counties and cities to make decisions that provide opportunity and growth for us, not the other way around. I know There's always pain and discomfort in change. One of the fellows I work with back here, and he can tell you that I hate it. I hate change. It's important. We have to have change. We have to move forward as a society. And I urge you to vote in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Brewer? No, you can go play with your grandkids, but thank you very much. Okay, Janet Charlo, did you wish to speak? Again, would you please give your name and address for the record? And keep your remarks to no longer than 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name's Janet Charlo. I live at 3610 North Lincoln in Urbana. And I have a couple of statements. One is that the land that is going to be used for this road is going to subdivide our farm, which is over 100 years old. And when Hanson Engineering came through to do the preliminary study several years ago, I would like to show you the artifacts that they came and found. Some are prehistoric artifacts, and some are historic artifacts. The historic start in 1781, the prehistoric date before 1781. That land is precious. It grows great crops. It is needed to feed our people. It is needed to feed our people more than it's needed to move our people. Secondly, according to the Long Range Project, this is a $27 million project. One of the goals and objectives as listed in the project is that they want to improve the average vehicular travel time by at least 1.5 minutes during the peak rush hours on major traffic corridors by 2035. We are spending $27 million to save 1.5 minutes of travel time. And we're going to destroy farmland. We're going to subdivide farmland that feeds our people. We are going to also take in businesses that have recently become a part of that community, which I think you all had a chance to visit. Lastly, we were told previously that this is not a ring road. This is a picture of the road as put on the website for the long-term study. If this is not a ring, it's a square. I mean, you can call it what you want, but it encircles the city. And that, to me, would be a ring. I don't know what part of it would not then be identified as a ring. So I think there needs to be more thought given to this. I think there are other options. I think Mr. Cope has given you another option that's possible that would work, that would take out Lincoln Avenue and Olympian Drive, connect the two, and not have to destroy farmland and people's prosperity. I think it needs to be considered. The gentleman spoke about jobs. This project probably is 5 years away. And then he spoke about the businesses that will come. The businesses will only come if the farmers who have this very, very rich, valuable land, only found in the Midwest, are willing to sell this to some sort of research and some sort of industrial park. So I think consideration for our standard and what we in Central Illinois are, and we are a farming community. That is what we are here. That is what we do here, and that is our industry. Our industry is our farming. And I think it needs to be realized that that is an industry for us here. Thank you.
Thank you. Harold Charlo does not wish to speak, but wants to be registered in opposition. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, next, Habib. Again, please state your name and address and keep your remarks to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Habib. By profession, I'm the president and CEO of Benefit Planning Consultants in Champaign. Been in business for 30 years in the community. But also, I'm a member of the board of directors of the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm the chairman of Champaign County First, a cooperative joint effort between the Champaign County Chamber and the Economic Development Corporation in Champaign. I stand here today before you to urge you to support the Olympian Drive expansion project as outlined in the Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Transportation Study Long-Range Plan. Inclusion of the Olympian Drive expansion project in the LRTP is necessary to be eligible for federal funding and is the first step for increasing economic opportunity in northern Urbana. The project is good for Urbana, and it's good for Champaign County as a whole. The Olympian Drive project has been in the works for decades and has been a key focal point for economic development of northern Urbana-Champaign. Once completed, the road will help reduce the traffic congestion or I-74. It would link Urbana with northern Champaign. It would open up hundreds of acres to economic development and will also provide easy access for those located on Olympian Drive to I-74, I-57, I-72, Route 45, and Lincoln and Prospect Avenues. Our group, Champaign County First, had a successful visit to Washington, D.C. this last September. We went to urge our elected officials in Congress to support funding for area projects. We went on your behalf, on behalf of all the communities involved in our area. The elected officials were very impressed with our speak with one voice approach. As a matter of fact, they said many communities do not come and speak with one voice. We went speaking with one voice, and we had three priorities. Olympian Drive was our top priority. Congress will soon be reauthorizing the federal transportation funding bill, and we must continue to show a united front for the Olympian Drive project. We will be returning to Washington, D.C. this coming February, either in late February or the first week in March. We would love to be able to go back and tell Congressman Tim Johnson and Senator Dick Durbin that Olympian Drive continues to be our #1 priority for the community. We would like to speak with one voice once again. I urge you not to let this moment slip by and to support the Olympian Drive project. Thank you, and happy holidays to you and your loved ones. And I'll take questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you very much. Joe Behrens. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Yes, okay.
My name is Joe Behrens, and I live at 3609 North Lincoln. I grew up on the farm, so I've been very familiar with farming all my life. I graduated with agriculture from the U of I. One of the things that I did study was soil and farm management. In traveling throughout the nation and the traveling I've done, I've learned to appreciate the soil in this area more than it's the best that I've ever seen. It's the most productive. We're going to be having a food crisis because of global warming, and I feel like the land and everything, the community, the environment needs to be maintained. The ring road around the area, I don't see that it will benefit the environment or the climate change. The goals of this are to maintain the quality of life in this area, Champaign-Urbana, and I don't see that the road out there is necessary. The money, it seems like, could be spent inside of the town to maintain traffic. Yet when the first time we met here, you were talking about the bicycle paths and making Champaign-Urbana bicycle friendly. There are projects where a lot money can be spent to increase the quality of life in Champaign-Urbana, I think, without building a road around the town, which would appear to me to encourage sprawl. I've gone to school here, and I've seen a lot of buildings and areas set vacant for years, And it seems like promoting the development inside of the Champaign-Urbana area would be a very good goal instead of the road around the town, which would encourage, basically as I see it, sprawl. This road scene, in my opinion, it was started to be planned and thought for 10, 20 years ago, and that was before global warming and all of the problems that we have this day and age. And I think it's antiquated thinking. I think we need modern thinking and not just say, well, this road has been planned for this many years. But I think we need to rethink our priorities, and the quality of life and the environment. Global warming are the problems of today. So I think those are some things that need to be considered when you do your voting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Atkinson?
My name is Mary Atkinson. I live at 3609 North Lincoln, and I just have a couple things tonight. The first is sort of a little discrepancy in the report. On page 112 of the report, it states that it describes Lincoln Avenue as heavily traveled. Well, part of it is, but the part that in the plan is to be redone has virtually no traffic. And I can say that because I live on that street, and I can count on one hand the times I've had to wait to pull out on that street for any traffic. There is no traffic. There's a car now and then, but nothing that can be described as traffic. Well, that's that part. The second part is just sort of emotional. And all this talk and all these meetings and all the things that people have said, how on one hand it's going to bring incredible development, and on the other hand it's destroying the best land, which it would. No one is talking about the people. If anyone here has ever been the victim of of eminent domain, you don't know how heartbreaking that is. You don't know what it does to a person. And that's part of what we're talking about here, because it will go through farms that people have plowed for a century or more. It will go through people's backyards. It will go through heaven knows what else. But that's a very real consideration in my mind. I think you can't take the human element out of this. I think it's important. That's really all I have to say.
Thank you very
Thank
much. Andrew Proctor?
Good evening, all. It's good to see you again. My name is Andrew Proctor, Public Policy Manager for the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce. I'll be reading a prepared statement here. The Champaign County Chamber of Commerce, representing nearly 1,300 local businesses and 65,000 employees, expresses its support for the Olympia Drive expansion project as outlined in the Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Transportation Study Long-Range Transportation Plan 2005. Inclusion of the Olympia Drive expansion project in the plan is necessary to be eligible for federal funding and is the first step for increasing economic opportunity in northern Urbana. The continuation of Olympia Drive east of Apollo Drive connecting to Cunningham Avenue, Route 45, will open up hundreds of acres of land to new economic development. According to a recent study by the Wisconsin Economic Development Association, for every acre developed for commercial or industrial use generates 11 permanent jobs for the community and county. And according to the National Association of Home Builders, the construction of 1,000 homes generates 2,448 construction and construction-related jobs. That equates to roughly $80 million in new wages and $42 million in federal, state, and local tax revenue. The alternative proposed by those who oppose the Olympia Drive project for construction and expansion on the Fort Harris Road is not feasible. Fort Harris Road will be more expensive to construct. The City of Champaign segment of Olympia Drive would need to be completed with a new interchange in I-57. Additionally, the existing sewer and water lines do not cover the land adjacent to Fort Harris Road, hindering economic development. The Olympia Drive project has been in the works for decades and has been a key focal point for the economic development of northern Urbana Champaign. Once completed, the road will help reduce traffic congestion on I-74, link northern Urbana with northern Champaign, open up hundreds of acres to economic development, and provide easy access for those located on Olympian Drive to I-74, I-57, I-72, Route 45, Lincoln, and Prospect Avenues. Jointly, the Champaign County Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Corporation, and the cities of Urbana, Champaign, Savoy, and the county were successful this year in securing $5 million of state funding for Olympian Drive through the state's capital budget, and advocated for federal funding while in D.C. this past September as part of Champaign County First. 12 years after its initial construction, we have never been closer to having the project finished than we are today. Congress will soon be reauthorizing the federal transportation funding bill, Safety Lou, and we must continue to show a united front for Olympian Drive to Congressman Tim Johnson and Senator Dick Durbin in order to be successful at securing federal funding necessary to complete the project. Sincerely, Laurel Wise, President and CEO of the Chamber.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, thanks. Hal Barnhart?
I don't wish to speak.
Okay,
I am
sorry.
opposed to the project.
Sorry about that. Okay. Does not wish to speak, but is opposed. Michael Herbert?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to speak. I'm Mike Herbert. I reside in Philo, Illinois. I have an office in Champaign on Boardwalk Avenue, just adjacent to Olympia Drive. I believe that Olympia Drive has been a long-range plan in the transportation for a number of years. I believe that the economic boon to northern Urbana might have possibly been better some time ago if we hadn't lost the regional distribution center from Super Value. There is a building on the west side of the tracks, the Newell building, that might have been closer to Super Value. I feel that Urbana not moving forward with this project might inhibit the growth of 45, which has got a somewhat of industrial manufacturing base out there. I think there's some ground there that could be utilized and use the corridor, and with the access that this road might bring would be a benefit to the cities and the county. And I appreciate it. I'll take any questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. William Cope?
Thanks very much for listening to us again. We've been around this conversation several times now, and at the end of the last week's council meeting, we had an amendment from Charlie and from Brandon, which was some very good comments I think you were making about the plan. And in fact, I would say the comments that you've made in your proposed amendment are so good that the plan is not viable, because what you do is actually criticise some of the fundamental assumptions in the plan in your amendments. So I'm very appreciative that the conversations have come to this point over these 3 weeks now that we've been here, and it's been a good dialogue and a good conversation, I think. What I want to emphasise is that nearly all the money in this plan goes to the peripheral road and the I-74 extension, and that's really what it's about. So it might have some things in it which we find to be good and acceptable, the bike paths, a number of things in town, but it's really about the peripheral road and the I-74 extension. One of the previous speakers said that he went to Washington and this community speaks with one voice. It doesn't speak with one voice. We're building an ever stronger opposition to the principle of this road. Now, some of us are affected by the road directly, but that's not the point. It's really points of principle because it affects other people in similar ways. And I think we're going to make it very clear all the way to Washington that there's not one voice. This is a deeply divided community on this issue, and we will fight it tooth and nail the whole way. And we want a different kind of economy, a different kind of community, one which is a 21st century community, not a 1970s community. This plan's a 1970s plan. Let me tell you now, last week I had 7 reasons, now I've got 8. I've rethought this. You know, you go through this in your head, you think it through more, and I just want to very briefly say here are 8 reasons why the plan really must be rejected by the Council at this stage. Firstly, it goes through these environmentally sensitive zones. We know there's a wildlife corridor, fragments of the Big Grove, wetlands, floodways, remnants of stuff. It's an incredibly beautiful area. Taking 87 acres of that to cover it in asphalt would be criminal. Many acres of farming land will be destroyed. This is my second point. The world's, some of the world's best farming land, 85.7 acres of it. Now, if this road was necessary, sure, I'm not opposed to roads, but I think we can demonstrate pretty clearly that we don't need this road. That it'll involve, as the plan demonstrates, more driving and faster driving instead of driving through town, which doesn't take long. I mean, to talk about congestion, I've moved here from a big city. To talk about congestion in Urbana-Champaign is a joke. I've never seen congestion that I recognise to be congestion. And in fact, I find it's quicker to drive and easier just to drive from A to B directly. But to put in a road where we'll drive faster, use more fuel, take longer to drive, the figures within the plan itself are entirely self-contradictory. It's more dangerous, it uses more fuel. Everything about peripheral roads is a 1970s concept, and that's not the way in which urban planning is going these days. That's the third point. Fourth plan is, of course, it will encourage peripheral development, and we know the pattern of peripheral development is it's cheaper to build on the edge. You build at the edge, the centre gets hollowed out. And there's so much space in these towns which is not well used, highly dispersed development. Until all those spaces are filled, forget about peripheral development. People, of course, developers will go peripheral for all sorts of reasons, and the centre will collapse. That's the model. That's how urban stuff works. The fifth point is that we've got plenty of industrial land that's not used. I mean, we heard about how Christie Clinic didn't build along the existing Olympian Drive. There's so many spaces where industrial development can occur. There's no need to spread it out all over the place and throw industrial activity in the middle of cornfields for the foreseeable future. My sixth point, and I said this last time too, was that this is the classic road to nowhere. It is the trip from the Walmart to the lonely adult store on Route 45. Until it becomes a fully fledged peripheral road, it is just simply a classic exercise in jobs for jobs' sake. We can get $27 million from the federal government somehow or other, and we'll build a road. The other end of Olympian, which barely gets used, and after this has happened, with other roads, with I-74 and the Leverett Road, the people from Rantoul and from 45 use the Leverett Road connection to the Market Street intersection. Honestly, how many roads can you have and how much use can it have? And it is, I think, at one level scandalous to be building a road when there are so many roads already there. Seventh point is mid-20th century design. A huge right-of-way, the absurdity of having to go east in order to travel west. So there's this huge dogleg in the reconstructed North Lincoln where you've got to head that way before you can go that way. No one's going to use a road like that. No one's going to go across diagonally that way in order to head back to 57. So that's, just intuitively ill-conceived. And that we've built, we actually, as a group, paid for Burns Clancy to build an alternative suggestion which serves some of the development objectives. We're not opposed to development or industrial stuff. It just should be well planned and concentrated and have 21st century planning principles behind it as opposed to mid-20th century planning principles. My eighth point is about the vision of progress. We've heard today from the last couple of speakers that we need to support progress. Well, listen, I support progress. I support employment growth, industrial jobs, all that stuff. But there are ways to do it which involve good urban planning and also thinking of new types of jobs, the kind of employment that's in the little farms that are going to be destroyed by this now, which is actually highly labour-intensive, boutique, niche production. That's the future. There are so many factory buildings of old-style industry which are just left empty at the moment. Let's think of a different type of progress and different types of employment which are more likely to be viable forms of employment in the future. And that's where our future really lies, rather than that sort of old 20th century thinking. So in conclusion, from my point of view, it's a 1970s plan with a 2000s rationale bolted on. It's entirely contradictory for that. So when it talks about sustainable development and blah, 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 it just doesn't work. It's just completely illogical because this has been bolted on. And that it's really important at this stage that the Urbana City Council rejects the plan, because the points that you've regarded as significant problems are the main aspects of this plan, and it's time to go back and do a new plan. Yes, a plan that has roads in it. Roads are important, and a plan that is on about development and progress in the industry, all of that stuff, but not this plan. So I'd like to just suggest that the Council, this is a very important moment, and it's important the Council rejects the plan today.
Mr. Cope, I have a question for you.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Isn't it true that you have a subdivision?
Yes.
Okay, so why did you choose your subdivision in your location there rather than in infill?
I'm going to be honest with you. With infill?
Yes.
No, I chose it for its environmental values. It's an incredibly beautiful place, and it's a forest, right? So that's why I chose that space. So, it's a really beautiful place, and I want the values of that place, the environmental values and the beauty of that place, to be preserved. Now, strewn out industrial development through that area will be a disaster. Building a big road will be a disaster. Quite honestly, I knew this road was coming, and I met with Libby Tyler and whatever, and it doesn't affect me hugely in a personal way. So I'm in trees, and I'm not hugely personally affected. For me, it's a point of principle for my neighbours and the people around me who are very seriously affected. So, from my point of view, it's a set of points of principle. And yes, this is the kind of, as you may know, that I'm working with a group of people in the School of Architecture in the university to think of new forms of ecological housing where, on our site we can experiment with new ways of living in these kinds of settings. So I think, one of the wonderful things about Urbana and Champaign as a place is that it's a place which has a lot of, people doing really innovative, progressive things around new forms of housing. The wonderful work that Leslie and Wes do in terms of thinking up new kinds of agriculture has a proud history of doing this innovative kind of work. So whether it's building environmental housing, the stuff that I'm thinking of, modest environmental stuff, or whether it's doing new forms of agriculture, I think this kind of land should be preserved for that, and not old kinds of thinking, big roads and strewn out industry, all over the place industry. So if you like, my last point about building a new kind of economic vision is that. And I would like to think that in a modest kind of way, in a very small kind of way, that's what I'm trying to do as well.
Charlie?
Bill, looking at the plan that the alternative plan that folks have put together, the criticism that I had is that it doesn't plan for a bridge over the railroad, and we need a bridge over the railroad for Lincoln Avenue to connect to Olympian Drive, and so this big landing area. How do you propose to get over the railroad tracks?
Actually, with that, we intended that to be a bridge, and that bridge, the total length of, it goes at an angle across the railroad, I know, but also it's a point where the railroad is not terribly wide. It's about 2 or 3 tracks. It's not the full width of the railroad. 4 tracks. But even so, once you're building a bridge, you're building a bridge, and so these days, look, in Japan and in Europe, they build hundreds of miles of railroad lines which are bridges the whole way. They build motorways which are bridges the whole way. So whether the bridge is 100 feet long or 70 feet long or 120 feet long, once you're building a bridge, in fact, the most environmentally destructive aspect of bridge building anyhow is digging the hole to get the land, to get up to the level of the bridge. So for me, the difference in the length of the bridge between the one which in the Olympian plan and the one we propose is not a big distance. And compared to, this proposal also is a much cheaper proposal to construct and much more realistic to get the funding. So, in other words, and what it does is cut that insane dogleg out of, why, as again, the point, if you look the proposed North Lincoln goes that way in order to head that way. Well, what we proposed is just go straight ahead and curl around and reach the existing Olympian. Now, you know, I might say we're not wildly enthusiastic about this idea, but in good faith we tried to think of something which met the objectives, the industrial development objectives, the heading north from super value objectives. And I think in some respects we meet those objectives better. So although we're not wildly enthusiastic about that as an idea, we were trying to come up with something which we thought was a fair compromise and which met other people's objectives other than our own as well. So that was why we did that, and we got Tom Burns to draw that drawing. So it was just, you know, for better or for worse, it was an attempt to make a constructive suggestion. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
John Dimmitt?
Good evening. I'm John Dimmitt, 2711 Plantation Point, Urbana. I'm here tonight representing, I'm going to speak in two roles. I'm going to represent the Economic Development Corporation as I speak at first. We did send you a letter in support of Olympian Drive, and I just don't want to read through the letters. You've had the opportunity to read it. But I did want to note that it did talk about 50 years of planning for this particular roadway, Olympian Drive. It talked about the fact that both the land use plans of Champaign and Urbana and county zoning decisions have all been in support and in expectation of this road being constructed. There have been millions and millions of dollars of existing investment put into this project that would have to be respent if the road were to be relocated. And also that this roadway has had broad support over the years after many, many series of meetings. The most recent ones that I can recall that were widely based, community based, were the Big Small All meetings where at Olympian Drive was mentioned specifically, the completion of Olympian Drive on the north side of Urbana as part of the outcomes of the Big Small All effort. And also to just note that there is a current opportunity to put together the funding package. That's what's caused this road to take so long to build, is the funding has been difficult. And we're at a point now where we think we have it put together. I also have a second letter this evening, which I'll hand to Phyllis, that was just completed at about 2:30 this afternoon, and she has copies to hand out to all of you. And this letter is on behalf of the Champaign County Lincoln, Oak, and North Market Industrial Roundtables. It's two industrial roundtables that the Economic Development Corporation works with, and we had a joint meeting about a month ago, and we attempted to put together some communication on that. And that letter is signed by 13 businesses. They are a combination of businesses that are on the west side of the tracks and also businesses that are on the east side of the tracks. So they're Urbana and Champaign businesses. And they once again stress that many times they've made their corporate locations in anticipation of this roadway since it's been in the city plans, public plans for so long, and they are speaking in support. Also, subsequent to finalizing this, we did receive, and I do have emails that back up those individual support. I know the letter is not with signature, but quite honestly, we thought we had a little bit more time to do this, and it only became apparent in the last 2 weeks that we needed to prepare these letters in a big rush. I do need to point out that the first letter that was sent to you on behalf of the EDC, the Executive Committee of the EDC approved it unanimously with one abstention, and that abstention was the Urbana staff representative, and it was proper for that person to abstain. The letter that you have in front of you has also been approved by the full EDC board. We have a board of directors of 36, and we had 32 of the 36 vote, and it was unanimous in favor. Once again, 4 non-voters or abstentions. And so the support from the EDC is substantial. Subsequent to finalizing the letter that I just handed out, we did receive an email from Ken Mathis, who is a member of the Industrial Roundtables. but also serves as Somer Township Supervisor. And in his email, he wished me to speak to it tonight. He could not be here. The township supports the extension of North Lincoln and Olympian Drive because it would reduce heavy traffic on the township oil and ship roads. Further, in his email, Ken Mathis points out that Shirley Squire of Squire Farms supports the project, as does Robert Lakey, and they are two of the 4 landowners that would be involved in the right-of-way. In addition to that, I know you received a letter from William Bates, another landowner that would be affected and whose farm would be directly used for the roadway, and he also indicates that Terry O'Neill and Jim Heimberger, other farmer-type landowners in that area, also support the project. I just wanted to make sure that that communication is presented to you. Now I want to take off my EDC hat for just a moment and speak as a taxpayer for the city of Urbana. And it is in combination of 40 years of working in this community in support of the development of this community. It is quite frustrating that when we talk about economic development in this community in terms of job-generating businesses, that everyone looks west. And when we try to identify sites in Urbana where corporations can locate companies and facilities, Urbana has a deficit, and we have a deficit of available sites that we can offer. And it does get quite frustrating in my position, knowing that I'm going to be paying really good property taxes for the quality of life that I thoroughly enjoy living in Urbana and experiencing, but knowing that a lot of people in Urbana have been forced to obtain their employment on the other side of Wright Street or in other parts of the county. And so I would hope that we would do what it takes to make sure that Urbana gets its fair share of industrial and commercial development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Charlie?
Yeah, John, thanks. Leaving your Urbana school board hat on and your taxpayer hat on.
I did not speak with my school board hat on.
Well, but you know they're the same for me. The taxpayer part. To me, this is a fairly important issue for the school district. Could you tell me how much of the land up there is school district in Urbana versus what's in Champaign?
I can speak as an individual school board member. I cannot speak on behalf of the corporate school board because corporately the school board has not discussed this issue. As an individual school board member, I'd be pleased to speak. The district line between the Unit 4 and Unit 116 at where the proposed Olympian Drive would come across is located roughly a quarter mile east of Lincoln Avenue. So the majority of North Lincoln Avenue is in Unit 4. It is not in Unit 116. This, to me, is what drives home the point that if we're to go to the expense, and most of the $27 million is to get across the railroad tracks. It's to do the bridge across the railroad and also to do the other bridge across the Saline. But unless we extend the road over to Cunningham, Unit 116 does not benefit. And we do not, and I know that your city plan does not call for a North Prospect. Nobody has in mind a North Prospect when we talk about development immediately north of the airport of Frasca Field, but we do talk about light industrial development. And I think it's important to have entities up there that contribute to the public services that we use, and that includes schools, but that don't have such a demand on public schools as residential development does.
So your thinking is it's the 45 connection that you're after that's beneficial for Urbana, as opposed to the North Lincoln Avenue connection.
I don't think the area north of Frasca will develop unless there's a bridge across the railroad.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about Airport Road? How all of Airport Road, for the most part, would be in the Urbana School District, right?
Yes, it is.
Up until, again, would be a quarter mile from Lincoln, or
no?
All of it.
No, the line.
All of it.
The line, and part of For instance, super value is in Unit 116.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't know how far north you go before Unit 4 comes across. I don't know the exact break up there. But I believe that the paving company and so forth, I believe that's in Unit 4.
Okay, thanks.
Heather?
I do know that as far north off of 45 as Leverett Road, Arrowhead subdivision, that is in Unit 116.
Oh, yeah, Unit 116 goes very far north of town.
Just short of Thomasboro, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
We are very, 116 is very much a north-south type school district. For instance, High Cross Road and Anthony. High Cross Road, the Apple Dumpling Restaurant, for instance, is in the St. Joe School District. So the school district is shaped like that, like an hourglass up there.
Heather?
John, as a taxpayer, as you've done your holiday shopping, where have you been able to find places to do your shopping?
Well, we probably have to consult my wife for most of that. I try to shop in Lincoln Square as much as I can, but in terms of major purchases, the opportunities to shop in Urbana are limited.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Howard and Margaret Erlinson?
I do not wish to speak, ma'am. I
Oh.
would just like to have our opposition noted.
Okay. We'll record you as opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cameron Moore?
Hi, my name is Cameron Moore. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. I actually reside in Mahomet, but work maybe a mile away from here at the Brookings Administrative Center here in Urbana. I'm really here tonight to encourage you to endorse the long-range transportation plan. And if I could, I'd like to give a little context for that. The long-range transportation plan process actually started almost a year ago. It started in January of this year. And it's conducted by QODS, and you've heard that name a lot, but I think, again, it's important to put that in perspective. The Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Transportation Study is actually a federally designated organization, and the generic term is a metropolitan planning organization. MPOs are established by both the U.S. DOT and state DOTs, any place where there's a community of 50,000 or more, and then they kind of draw some boundaries to take in the surrounding areas. The reason that that's important is because QODS receives annual funding from the Federal Highway Administration, which passes through IDOT. And with that funding, there are certain required activities that QODS is required to engage in, and one of which is, in fact, the long-range transportation plan. We do an update annually, and we completely redo the 25-year long-range transportation plan every 5 years. If you will, it's a required deliverable by the Federal Highway Administration. The deadline for this particular plan is December 31st of this year. Without that plan, we run the risk of being ruled ineligible for federal dollars, not only for roads, but for transit or other needs in the community. MTD is a part of QODS. So I think it's important to look at it from that perspective. I also think that it's important to understand that I think this plan incorporates many of the principles, concepts, goals, and objectives that I've heard people talk about here today. Is it a perfect plan? Maybe not. But I don't think when you have a plan that's developed over a year-long period with broad input from a wide variety of stakeholders that you're going to find a plan that everyone will say, I like everything in it. But I think what you do have is a plan that represents a consensus position, not just with input from Urbana, obviously, but with the other communities and other stakeholders in the Champaign-Urbana area. So, you know, I think that we have came up with a good plan. I personally agree with many of the concepts and principles that I've heard people talk about here. But I also think that what we have to understand is I think we would all like to see fewer people in automobiles and fewer vehicle miles traveled. I don't think that you actually are going to accomplish that if you simply stop building roads. I think at least for the foreseeable future, roads will be a piece, and they shouldn't be the only piece of our transportation strategy. And I think if you look at this plan, it also incorporates measures to encourage people to use alternative modes of transportation. And I know there's been a lot of discussion here tonight about Olympian Drive, which would also include bike and ped lanes as well. So I don't think this is a plan that is just about Olympian Drive or just about roads. I do think it's a plan that represents collectively the best thinking of all of the people that have provided input into this plan over the past 12 months. I would encourage you to endorse this plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Cam? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Stephen Grierson, is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you for hearing us this evening. My name is Stephen Grierson. I live at 4132 North Lincoln Avenue. My sister and brother-in-law, Howard Erlinson and Margaret Erlinson, also live there. Like the Squire Farms, this farm has been in our family for 100 years. The house that's one of the two houses that are on the place was the house that my dad was born in, and he was there until about 6 hours before he died. My intent was always to retire there. As it so happens, I work in Chicago. I'm down every weekend. I just want to point out a few things. I've heard that this road has been planned for 20 years. As I recall, about 20 years ago, the Squire Farms and us and a bunch of the other neighbors were fighting a landfill that was going to go on the Squire Farm. It would have been, this road would have been going in the same place that this landfill is. So I don't understand how, for one thing, we could be saying that this had been planned for 20 years when the thinking was there was going to be a hole in the ground there 20 years ago. The landfill didn't go in because we were able to show that the landfill was going to be partially over the Muhammad Aquifer. There's talk about development going in where the road is. It won't be easy because the better part of what the road will be going through belongs to, well, 3 farms that are represented here, and we have no intention of making it easy for development to go in. I may be speaking for them, but I'm sure they would agree with me. We certainly wouldn't. And more than likely, you guys, or whoever would be building the road, would be deemed to go into eminent domain, which, as was pointed out, can be, emotionally crippling. I heard it mentioned that Fort Harris and, I guess by extension, the Leverett Road is not a viable alternative because utilities aren't there. Water and sewage is not up to where the proposed Olympian Drive is now. So if it would have to put in to go there, it could be put in to go up to either Fort Harris or the Leverett Road. I've had people that live around in Rantoul and Pasodum, the north and northeast communities, tell me that driving down, that they usually use Fort Harris, and they think that the Olympian Drive would be great because it's so hard to turn on and off of Leverett Road. I guess I would point out that it would probably be much cheaper to just put in a stoplight at Leverett Road and Route 45, so they could exit and enter there. Well, I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much. Looks like Dave and Gail McKay.
Good evening. My name's Dave McKay, M-C-K-A-Y. I live on 4102 North Lincoln Avenue, and I don't think I can convince many people otherwise. I'm just here to really support my neighbors. I'm a civil engineer and have been for over 30 years, and I know that objectives come first and plans come later. So it's with a healthy dose of skepticism that I look at this plan. I've read many plans. I've worked in transportation. And I really think there's a build it and he will come kind of attitude. You all know the movie Field of Dreams. So that's all I really want to express.
Okay, thank you very much. Eric Thorsland? Would you like to sit in the other chair because the microphone's there?
I'll sit right in the middle.
Okay, all right.
My name is Eric Thorsland. I live in Newcomb Township, otherwise known as a northern area of Mahomet. I've heard a lot of people talk so far tonight. I know this has been a topic of much discussion among us specialty farmers, especially. One voice was mentioned. I think it would be very simple to say we've heard one voice for a long time. The old voice was grow or die. Every house we bring in, every business we bring in, we pave our streets with gold. Our taxes will go down. Everything will be wonderful. We had a boom, and another boom, and now we have a bust. And we've heard what it's done. We've heard what it's done to the trades. Why do we have 30% unemployment in the trades? Because we had so much growth going on that people came in to take advantage of those jobs. It's very easy to document that this is a common problem. Things grow, people come in, people move in. The jobs don't come entirely from within the community, but they become the community's problems. Now we have 30% unemployment. I understand they need work. We all need work. There's plenty of work to do. There's a wonderful golden carrot of federal money. And they've been planning this for a long time. And you can tell the difference between the voices that come up and tell us how much we need it. And they want to speak in Washington with one voice. But you'll find out if you ask people, what would you rather have? Would you rather have more sprawl, which was the #1 topic of Big Small All, farmland preservation and reduce sprawl? That was the #1 topic. Or would you like to fix what we already have? Would you like to see your taxes go down? Or would you like to see people whiz by? Clearview, I made a link to that in the newspaper a while ago. We heard all the stories. I sat as a lone voice in opposition to the enterprise zone for Clearview at a county board meeting. No one else even knew it was on the agenda. It was in the consent agenda. We got it voted down. I asked someone to pull it off the agenda. I spoke out against it, and they voted it down the first month. They came back with a big PR blitz. They said it was going to be the Mayo Clinic of East Central Illinois. Well, right now, the only thing that's happening out there is the St. Thomas More cross-country team. And they have the homecoming parade. That light blinks to no one in the middle of nothing. The city of Champaign would like some of that money back. They have a budget deficit this year. You, too, have a budget problem this year. Every house that gets built that has a supporting municipality is going to cost that municipality in $2,000, not 2010, somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 before you make a dime on taxes. Industry's better, but the best, most profitable thing for a community to support is farm ground. The infrastructure's there, the farmer pays for it. You just get the tax dollars. Whose money's involved, you can see. Some of the farmers that aren't here, that own land where this is proposed, aren't here because they're Clint Atkins. Oddly enough, the same person who developed Clearview. He stands to make some money on that ground eventually and has plenty of time to wait. Development will happen. It will happen much better if it's better planned. And we've heard a lot of talk about ring road. Don't call it a ring road. It's not a ring road. Well, I'll tell you what. If it looks like a ring and it's not a ring, it's a donut. In the middle of a donut, it's got nothing in it. And that's what's happened. You can see it in Champaign. You can see it in Urbana already. So just like a donut, it's full of a lot of calories, but it's really not good for you. I urge you to rethink this. There's two parts of this plan that make no sense at all. One is Olympia, the other is 4 lanes to Mahomet. So concentrate on the inside. Don't let the donut get too big. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you. Lisa Haynes?
Hi. I'm Lisa Haynes from Newcomb Township. I wanted to start off by saying I have nothing to gain by Olympia Drive. I don't live there. I am not in the trades. None of my family is in the trades. I have nothing to lose by the Olympia Drive road happening. I don't live there. I have friends that live there, so they have something to lose. So I'm coming here, I'm sitting in the back of the room watching some people kind of snicker when people come up and talk about artifacts and just think about the feelings of the farmers who live there and don't want to sell, or talking about sprawl and how traffic affects the environment. You need to think of those people and the concerns for the environment and the concerns for the artifacts and the concerns for the farmers that have had land in their family forever and don't want to sell it. I'd also like to say that there's this one voice going to Washington talking to Tim Johnson and Dick Durbin. I'm not part of that one voice, and when they go, I would like them to say Tim Johnson, Dick Durbin were one voice, except Lisa Haynes. So I'd like a minus sign next to that, and I would encourage them to add everyone else to that list of people that doesn't want to be on the one voice. I'd have a lot I'd like to say besides this, but I think it's been covered, although I'm hard of hearing, so I don't know. So please think of the little people, reject the notion that the only way to have enterprise in Urbana is with Olympia Drive, because you could focus on businesses already there. I think it's not that hard to get from Rantoul to Marketplace Mall, that you need to put in a new road for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie Cooper Band?
My name is Leslie Cooper Band, and I live at 4410 North Lincoln Avenue. I urge you, the mayor, and the city council of Urbana to reject the Champaign County Long Range Transportation Plan 2035. I realize that this plan is a requirement for federal funding. However, there are too many inconsistencies in the plan. I hope that you all have actually taken the time to read through the plan, particularly the goals and objectives stated in the plan. They invoke sustainability at every turn. In fact, there's so much language about sustainability and lowering the region's carbon footprint, decreasing the number of miles traveled, et cetera. And yet, when you look at the actual plan itself, it is the antithesis of sustainability. Most of the folks who have spoken in opposition to this road have already pointed out the reality that this is, in fact, a beltway or ring road type of transportation plan, and that most of the funding that is being sought at the federal level is for development of these new roads or widening of existing interstate roads. This is your opportunity to really be thoughtful and really use the values that you yourselves have invoked in terms of sustainability. You pride yourself on being a progressive city with open-minded public officials, and yet you blindly will accept a plan that is riddled with inconsistencies and contradictory to your purported values of sustainability. If you don't take this opportunity to review this plan more thoughtfully and not just rubber stamp approve it, you will miss the opportunity to make a statement about the need for real change that is in line with your purported values. We have heard over and over that this plan has been in the works for decades. That is not a reason for spending $27 million on a road. Thank you.
Any questions? I wanted to ask you, I know that you have very high quality cheese. You're selling it through Williams Sonoma.
That's correct.
Doesn't that take a lot of transportation to do that?
In fact, no, it doesn't. I sell the cheese to a cheese shop in Chicago. I don't send it out to Williams Sonoma directly.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
And since you're asking about our cheese focuses on our local market. We sell primarily in Urbana-Champaign, Central Illinois, and Chicago. And we have a very strong following in this region. Most of the customers who we interact with, who have been to our farm for our farm dinners, value the area that we live in and want it to be maintained as a beautiful agricultural area. And we do represent a new kind of agriculture. And we live in harmony with the existing cash grain agriculture. And for you to dismiss that as a type of economic development and only focus on the conventional industrial type development is very narrow-minded and short-sighted.
Okay. Thank you. Wes Gerald?
So, can I put up 3 slides?
Sure.
Where's that? Let's see. Coming on. My name's Wes Gerald. I'm at 4410 North Lincoln Avenue. I might be batting cleanup here, so I'll say a few things while we're getting this going. One is that we thought about Fort Harris as an alternative, and early decided that was not a very viable alternative. So that's not something that's on our table. Congestion on I-74. I haven't lived in a lot of big cities, but I've seen congestion, and I haven't seen much congestion on I-74, and it looks like with those new lanes, it'll take a while before that happens. Also, there was a comment made about the township supervisor in Somer Township. He does not speak for all of Somer Township. We live in Somer, and in fact, feel that there are, as we've documented, many good reasons not to put the road through at that point. And finally, I think Mr. Dimmitt brought up the issue of, well, many people, industrial development, but I think one of the big questions we have is why Highway 45 isn't viewed as a major development site for industry. It's got a 4-lane road with a great interchange coming off of the freeway, and it seems like just developing that and developing the other side around Super Value and Lincoln would take you a long ways in this effort without having to put a connector and somehow short-circuiting the freeway, which I believe is very useful for local traffic, and as far as I know, there's no rule against using it for local traffic. I just put up a reminder here, so sustainability, it's got to be social, economic, and environmental. All of those, they have to be dealt with simultaneously, and they have to be given equal weight. And so I think it's economic is, I've worked in this a long time. Economic's the easiest one to quantify because you put down dollars, but those dollars don't always result in balance with social and environmental concerns. So I would urge you, as much as you use that word, to use it holistically and honestly as something that balances all 3 of those. Finally, the donut. I appreciate the earlier comment, but it shows a center in the donut, but what we don't want is that to empty out like it has in so many other places that have developed a ring road. And it's really hard to look at this and not consider it a nice square or a ring. It shows Olympian going over to 45, but there's a blue section there that maybe that's been eliminated or put on hold, but it sure looks like it keeps on going over to High Cross and completes the ring, so that 45 isn't even part of the ring. So I'm not sure if that's been removed. The slide says project status in 2009, which is still the year we're in. So it looks like that might well be something that's still current, unless there's been a change of plans. I think also that there is a lot of land much closer to town, as well as the infill opportunities you've heard about before, that would create jobs and utilize existing infrastructure, cut down a lot on adding additional uses, and allow the mass transit and bicycle and pedestrian traffic to benefit that much more. So does the ring road serve the best purposes of the community? I'm calling it a ring road. Maybe someone else would call it something else, a connector, I know it's been called. And then what you have to consider through all this is, will Urbana really be more livable after this is done? And that's the quality of life issue. If you want people to move here who are going to really benefit the community and stay here, who are going to benefit the community and work here, we need to think about what will serve the whole community's purposes best and most honestly. I think that's all I have right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions?
Can I just pull it out, or should I?
Okay, thank you very much. Stephen Dyson? You don't want to talk, is opposed. Kathleen Dyson, also opposed. Virginia Ziegler? Opposed. You don't want to speak, though? Okay. How about Billy Ziegler?
Hi, I'm Bill Ziegler. I live at 4704 North Willow Road, which is a mile east of Lincoln Avenue and a mile west of Route 45. My brother and I own the Ziegler Farm, which has been in our family since 1865, and as tenant of the Squire Farm, I'm speaking on their behalf also. It was pointed out this evening that there would be hundreds of acres that could be developed if this road goes through. However, to develop any land, you have to have willing sellers, and the Ziegler Farm and the Squire Farm go from the railroad clear over a quarter of a mile east of Willow Road. So half of the length of the proposed Olympian Road would be over those two farms, and I speak on behalf of ourselves as well as the Squire Farms. We would not be willing sellers. You can use eminent domain, yes, to acquire the right-of-way for the road, but for the development purposes, in no way would we be willing sellers for that. Thank you.
Charlie Smythe has a question for you, sir.
Billy, real quickly, earlier, I'm very confused here because I would like to know where Shirley stands on this, because I hear one side that she is in favor of it, and then you're saying that she's opposed to it.
That's inconsistency that Mr. Charlo and I discussed a little bit. As a matter of fact, he placed a phone call, and I don't know how we can correct that this evening. I think that's an error when that statement was made that Squire Farm would be a willing seller. I know there are a neighbor or two of mine that have land on east of me that would, well, they said this evening they were willing sellers. I haven't talked to them. But I'm speaking for the Squire Farm and the Ziegler Farm. We would not be willing sellers.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir, would you like to come up?
If I could ask Mr. Smythe's question.
You want to come and talk to the microphone, because then we'll have it recorded. Thank you. State your name, please.
My name is Harold Charlo, and I live at 3610 North Lincoln. And when the letter was read from Ken Mathis, I was shocked. So I went out and I called Shirley Squire. Shirley Squire is a one-third owner of Squire Farms, as well as my wife, her brother, and Ralph Squire's brother. So she owns one-third of Squire Farms. And I asked her that we were shocked that this letter was presented, and she told me that she has never said that. She said that she is not fighting this because she fought the landfill, she fought the first project, and she's 80-some years old, and she's not going to fight it, but that she never told Ken Mathis that she was a seller of the property. And actually, even if she was, she's only a one-third vote of the three people that own the property.
Thank you very much. Mary Ziegler? Okay, but you don't want to speak. Eugene Ziegler?
Second all the opposition voices tonight. I don't wish to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Urbana City Council? Would you come forward, please, and state your name and address, and keep your remarks to 5 minutes.
My name's George Boyd. I live at 3705 East Airport Road in Urbana. I came here tonight not really knowing if I wanted to say anything. I just wanted to see what's going on. And it's the usual thing. All the usual people who think it's wonderful to have Olympian Drive make a ring road around the cities. With regard to what the one gentleman said, not all cities, not all large cities have ring roads. I could give you a long list of those that don't. One of the things I wanted to say, I'm in opposition to this. 5 years ago, out in northeast Urbana, which is where I live, we submitted a petition with more than 300 signatures that we gathered in that area in 4 days. Half a dozen of us. Those people still live there. I recently sent Eric Halverson a letter stating that we still have the same opposition that we had at that time. I don't have any problem. I was born in Urbana, 3 blocks from here at home. I've lived here most of my life. I was in the Army. I lived in California for a while. But I can go anywhere in this community, anywhere, in 20 minutes approximately. I'm talking about all the way out to Mattis, wherever you want to go. There is no lack of roads. This growth that has been proposed 5 years ago, I looked at the figures they were proposing for this magical growth in Champaign-Urbana. It simply hasn't happened. I think the city of Urbana has increased their population since the 2000 census by about 4,000 people with the spatial census you did not long ago. So where is this growth? Nothing has been done to improve Route 45, which is one of the things we talked about before. The same 300 people approximately northeast of Urbana still object to this. We object to a ring road, and there is absolutely no reason for it. Do you have a problem when you're driving around on Route 74 or 57 or wherever, getting backed up in traffic? Living in the Bay Area in California, I know what a backup in traffic is. It doesn't happen here. Most of you get back and forth to work in a matter of 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That is not congestion. And I just wanted to say that we still have, northeast of Urbana, the same objections to this that we had before. And that's really about all I have to say. I agree with a lot of the things people had, particularly this idea that one voice. I've never heard of these people. Who is this one voice? I think it's one little clique of people who want to get some money out of the government. The government has no money. This country is bankrupt. I think if you read the news in the newspaper and listen to the TV, you can see the Chinese said just in the last couple days that there's nobody to give us more money. So you're going to get this money from the government? Why don't you just print your own money, because it will have the same value that what you're going to get from the government? Zero. And I guess that's all I have to say. I just wanted to say that I agree with a large number of the people that have spoken. Yes, Mr. Smythe.
Charlie.
Yeah, Mr. Boyd, thank you. Part of the, this is actually much more than Olympian Drive. This is a discussion of the long-range transportation plan. And one of the aspects of that is, if you look at the plan very carefully, as I've read the whole thing twice now, is that Airport Road is to be improved so that it connects to Lincoln Avenue, between 45 and Lincoln Avenue. And my own thinking is that does open up a substantial amount of area that is potential industrial development. We already have some light industry along Airport Road and parts of it with Frasca and some related industries. How does the neighborhood up there feel about Airport Road going through?
Well, airport from Route 45 to Lincoln Avenue would probably be an improvement. But what you need to do, and most of the objections I've heard here tonight, don't have anything to do with that little section of road. So what you need is an amendment to this LRTP 2035 stating that perhaps some of this is good, but certainly not all of it, and particularly the Ring Road and Olympian and all of this $27 million, and you're going to save 1.5 seconds. The last time we were going through this 5 years ago, you were going to save 13 seconds with a new road that nobody knew how much it was going to cost, right through the middle between High Cross and Cottonwood, and that was going to be the magic formula from John Dimmitt. This, you can modify if you can approve what you want to approve and disapprove what you don't want. None of you are obligated to approve this just exactly the way it's written. You can put an amendment in there. That's my understanding. I think that's your obligation as the Urbana City Council. We've been through this conversation 5 years ago, more or less the same thing. And it's like cancer, it just keeps coming back. And so I don't really have anything else. Or does anyone else have a question for me at all?
Dennis Roberts.
Yeah. Hi, John. George. Let me ask, there was a lot of discussion about the development of High Cross Road to the north. And there was a suggestion at one time, about 5 years ago, I guess it was, about putting a trumpet connection to connect High Cross Road to the interstate and build a ramp so that traffic could come north and south. And then there was also discussion about the placement of another interchange to the east. Should it be on Cottonwood or some other place? So that study, the High Cross Road study, the North High Cross Road study, was pretty much defeated in the planning stage, and it was de-escalated from being a major connector to the north. So my understanding is that in its place, Cunningham Avenue was considered to be the north-south end of a ring, and there's really not been a significant successful plan to establish any connection to, like, say, High Cross Road or even farther to the east. Was your group lobbying against the development of a road, the widening of North High Cross, or did it have other concerns concerning specifically Olympian?
Well, we objected to any new roads in the area, if you go back and read the petition, which all of you got a copy of. We sent it to everyone, the University of Illinois, Savoy, Bonneville, everybody. And we wanted no new roads in the area. To tell you the truth, having lived here almost all of my life, and I have been out North Lincoln, I didn't realize until tonight just how many people are out there with 100-year-old farms. And I know there's been a lot of new farming in that area. And I think the gentleman with the English accent, I didn't really catch exactly who he is. Australian. Well, I think that England was somewhat involved with Australia. But at any rate, we objected to any new roads, particularly a ring road, and we proposed 1800 East for a connection to Interstate 74. And you're right, I had the feeling at that time that we had pretty much put this in here in a way, I think we eliminated the Trumpet Road for the most part. But guess what? They're back again. Between Brownfield Woods, Clements Cemetery, Trelease Woods, and just the general residential area along High Cross Road, it's impractical to think that that road is going to be very much improved to support semis coming up and down there to go to Walmart. In the first place, there's Highway 150, which was completed and opened in 1921, is a state highway. The idea that we need another highway is just a little bit preposterous. And it was the understanding at that time that you were going to improve Route 45. Now, I know you got an estimate from some firm in Indianapolis for some phenomenal amount of money to make it more beautiful coming into Urbana, and I'm in favor of beauty. I'm in favor of more people using Route 45 since Chanute closed. In 1993, the traffic has fallen off dramatically coming from the north. I never have a problem getting anywhere in this town at any hour of the day. I might get somewhat annoyed at times, like some girl pulling out in front of me a short time ago, and I couldn't avoid hitting her. But she was 17 by 1 week and just hadn't developed good judgment. But by and large, I think that if we would just improve what we have, and I'd be happy to go around town with all of you, some of you, any of you, and we'll make a list of empty buildings and areas that need to be developed. And you can do that right along Route 45. You don't have to go any further than that. But if you want to improve the road between Route 45 and Lincoln, I don't have any problem with that. And that's a pretty big road now. And but I think that the people with their farms, and we talk again about the wildlife and the saline and all these things. I just I don't see that there's any point in trying to kill off the good aspects of the community for the sake of a road at a large expense from a government that has no money. So what is the point? Now, 5 years from now, we're going to be going through this again, obviously. So it's every 5 years, you got to go back in for radiation treatments or something. I don't, that's my objection, and I'll let you go. Is there any other questions I could try and answer? No. I'll leave this here. I didn't fill it out originally because I didn't know what I was going to do.
Okay.
And I guess I do now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on.
Mayor? Oh.
Yes.
During petition, I would like to make a comment that's totally unrelated to this. The lights are on Goodwin Avenue. That project is nearly complete. It's one we've been trying to get done on campus for a long time. I've used the bike paths, the road as a vehicle, and now at night with the new lights. I would like to compliment Clark Dietz and our own city staff for getting that done. The lights really do work. I was a little worried that they would be too bright or not dark or not bright enough, and they seem to have hit the nail on the head. These are full cutoff lights. They look great. I think they set a standard. And Bill tells me that we can even go a little further now. He's got LED lights that should match it. So the campus area there from Goodwin to Lincoln is in dire need of lighting replacement. I hope that over the next few years we can find the money to do that, because there's a good deal of safety involved in improving that whole section of campus, and wards 1 and 2, which are covered by that. So anyway, if you haven't seen the lights, please check them out at night. My compliments to the staff for getting this project done. It was a tough one.
Heather.
Another petition and communication from a council member is to all of you who are townies. The Candlestick Lane has been revived this year, and so I took my kids, one of my children who had seen it a couple years ago, and then obviously didn't see it for a couple years, and now has seen it again this year. And she's 17 and still enthralled by the lights. So if you have time, I would say go enjoy it, because the people of that area take a lot of time to put out their lights, and it looks really nice.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on to old business, resolution number 2009-12-036R, a resolution to endorse the Champaign-Urbana Urbanized Area Transportation Study Long-Range Transportation Plan 2035. Do we have a motion? Okay, motion by Robert Lewis, seconded by Heather Stevenson. Brandon.
Yeah, and then I will move to amend this with the substitute resolution that I passed out, and after a second here, I could speak to it and I could walk through the changes.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment?
Yeah, so
that was
this-
seconded by?
Myself.
I don't know who was first here. Diane, I guess, was first.
Fine.
Second. Third. Okay. All right, your amendment, Brandon.
Yeah, I can walk through it. So at last week's meeting, which I wasn't available to attend, I know Charlie introduced this resolution wording that I guess I want to say I thank many of the people who came tonight on all sides of this issue for speaking out. This is democracy, and I think a lot of the concerns we've heard are things that we've tried to incorporate in this resolution and this amendment that go along with the document. I will just describe the changes that have happened since the version that Charlie had distributed, I think, to everybody individually by email. So the changes in the wording. First, at the top of page 3, and all the changes have the little track changes marked on them. We just took out one word, the word absolute. So it says we strive for a decrease in VMT and greenhouse gas emissions in order to protect our environment and reduce dependence on fossil fuels. So we took out the word absolute. This is more similar to the LRTP's language in that we want a decrease. Secondly, the next bullet point down about we ask that future planning efforts incorporate the greenhouse gas reduction targets. We simply left it at that first sentence, and I struck the second sentence there. We don't need to give the examples of what our targets are. The official targets haven't come from our Sustainability Advisory Commission yet. They will, and whatever those numbers may be at the time, we want transportation planning to align with our sustainability planning. The next change is in the next clause down. I simply added the word modern there, where it says alternate design options, including modern roundabouts.
There's a new one in between there.
Okay. There's another word that I missed?
No, there's a new bullet point that we encourage future travel. The third bullet. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was a new bullet point maybe since the version, Charlie, that you'd sent out. We encourage future travel demand modeling to include mode shift.
It's new from last week.
New since last week. So I think that one you all probably have seen. That we encourage future travel demand modeling to include mode shift scenarios that may occur when consumers choose non-auto modes of transportation or when fuel prices rise. Okay, the next one was just adding the word modern, roundabouts. That was a suggestion that I think I heard from Dennis, from Diane. Then on the next page, page 4, there was one significant change here, a pretty big change to the wording of how we talk about balancing fringe road, prioritizing core road connectivity, and so I'll just read the clause the way that I propose it. We encourage balancing fringe roads and core connectivity by prioritizing core intersections and roads identified as unsafe and or inadequate and improving connectivity for the central business districts and University of Illinois campus. So that's the proposed sentence with the original struck. Other than that, everything that's wording and in yellow is things that people had gotten prior, and basically the text that was seen last Monday when I was not able to be here. So that's the explanation of the motion, and people could debate and make changes or other suggestions if anything was missed based on the comments that people had. Thank you.
I like your changes, Brandon. I have one suggestion. I'm not going to make a motion, obviously, but on your next paragraph there, it says identify regional shortfalls before blanket expansion of roadway miles. I don't think we're doing blanket expansion, so it might be more fair to say before expansion and just delete blanket. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, that's
before expansion of roadway miles?
Yeah, before expansion of roadway miles.
Take out the word blanket.
Take out blanket, right.
I would be okay with that as the motion. It sounds like Diane's nodding her head. Okay. We'll strike blanket.
Okay. Are there any other comments on this? Dennis?
Yeah. On this motion, you're asking?
On the amendment, right.
On the amendment.
Yeah.
Brandon, are you interested at all in talking specifically about advising on the construction of Olympia Drive in this motion? supporting or not supporting the proposed?
This motion is at sort of a higher level and speaks to the whole LRTP and to my interest in basically applauding the goals of the LRTP. When you read the goals section, they really are great, and they really speak about, I think, the kind of sustainable transportation and the balance of modes of transportation that we want. And yet I think the remainder of the plan is not sufficient to get us to that laudable, future that we want to be at. And so this wording really speaks to how we can, in our further transportation planning, bring our planning in line with some of our sustainability goals. And that's my intention. You're right, Olympian Drive isn't mentioned, and I didn't intend to specifically speak about project by project, the Olympian Drive piece, and call it out, other than to say that the kind of modeling, the kind of balances, the kind of trade-offs and decisions we make should be taking into account more factors.
And I ask that because, of course, there is a lot of interest here in the audience about the future of Olympian Drive and its development. And the plan as proposed does mention it specifically as a development model. So I appreciate the fact that you're trying to talk about planning in general on a higher level and to encourage a very thoughtful approach to any development that does occur, so that if indeed a new roadway is created, it will take into consideration all the environmental and use and travel time problems and concerns that we have. And if there is going to be a drive that connects the northern part of the Urbana urban area, it should be built in such a way that it causes the least amount of disruption. And that would be the only thoughtful way of proceeding with any kind of construction at all. So I appreciate your comments, and I hope that they're strong enough to promote that thoughtful and conscious planning on the part of our developers of the future.
Heather, were you next, or Diane?
Diane was first.
Okay, Diane.
I just wanted to say I do support the concepts of the LRTP. I view this plan, like any of our other plans, as a framework and a guide, and I especially appreciate the great deal of attention put on sustainability in this plan. But like any plan, it's up to us as communities and the county to fill it in responsibly over the next few years. And I think the devil is in the details, and how we go about that is going to be key. So we have a guide. I support this resolution and the amendments we're making to it. And I think we need to be very careful about how we carry this out.
Heather?
Yes, I would say that tonight a lot of detail, obviously, and conversation has been about Olympian Drive. And what is before us tonight is a long-range transportation plan brought to us by CUWATs, who have spent hours upon hours and years upon years of long-time planning and conversations with people throughout the community, and not just the people that are affected by what might happen on an Olympian Drive. And tonight, I am in support of the long-range transportation plan, and that is because they have put a lot of thought and consideration into it.
Charlie?
I'd like to thank Brandon for getting for getting the process started on figuring out a way to include our ideas on the long-range transportation plan and provide some feedback on it for something that basically is a federal requirement and something that's going to go forward. To the plan, I added 4 bullet points, essentially, and I think two of them have been already read here tonight, and 2 of them I think deserve to be mentioned. So I'd like to read the 7th and 8th ones directly for those of you who are here. The seventh one is we encourage federal, state, and local road projects, new or redeveloping, to emphasize developing new roadway with 21st century design, including minimal widths and complete street design, alternate design options, including modern roundabouts, as well as implementing state-of-the-art bioswales and other wetland detention basin techniques to minimize disruption of any natural areas being crossed or to develop new natural areas. Road construction should consider all the costs and benefits, including sustainability, such as energy and materials used to build the road, the impervious surface and runoff, and the added vehicle travel that the road may bring. The eighth point is that we encourage regional planning efforts to include reducing sprawl and preserving prime farmland by encouraging compact, sustainable development, as well as encouraging shifts to active transportation options and increased vehicle occupancy. It was pointed out to me that we could solve a lot of our greenhouse gas emission issues, carbon offsets, the whole bit, by simply getting everybody who drives into work as a single individual to just double up. If everybody is, if there were 2 people per car coming into town, we could solve a great deal of our energy issues. And I thought that was an interesting idea. It's a behavioral change. And so active transportation options and increased vehicle occupancy are clearly 2 major alternatives. The long-range transportation plan, as Diana said, is something that's going to go forward. It needs to go forward. It's a federal requirement, and it's a framework. It's put together by by a number of people within the county. Though I don't find myself comfortable with a number of concepts here, we can deal with the details later. But I think that getting these amendments forward at least gets our opinion stated, because I think one of the things that comes out of all this is the need to change to a different mindset in terms of how we do development. What is good development? Is it just building more and more roads, or is it building new 21st century businesses? Is it infill development and so on? Clearly we do want to avoid getting a donut, and that we've had in a lot of other communities. We have a lot of Rust Belt communities to worry about, and so I'm far more concerned with making sure that the core of Urbana, the downtown, the existing business districts thrive. And of course I represent a central part of, I represent Ward 1, which is the center of the community. So for me, it's much more important to put the emphasis on the center and on those cores. And so the other issue, which I'm afraid the bullet point that I was most interested in, which was putting more emphasis and spending more money on the problem intersections, the core intersections, the core roads in our community and through our community, that's been watered down. I recognize it as a compromise position. I'm not real happy with it. I thought the language I had last week was stronger, but I'm going to accept it in the spirit of compromise and getting this forward. Thank you.
Dennis Roberts.
Yeah. I truly do understand the viewpoint of the people who have a lot of concerns about the development of the northern part of the county or the city area, the urban area. My ward is a north-south ward, and it extends along the entire length of Cunningham Avenue up to Airport Road. I mean, that's part of my ward. And yet I also represent the downtown, even the downtown shopping district. So there's 2 different kinds of concerns that I have. I really do strongly support a vibrant and strong downtown, and I think that it can only remain a vibrant part and core of our community if we revert to much more bike and walking interactive, and if the stores are close to the community in terms of shopping and local shopping, so that people can actually arrive at them by foot and enjoy them on a local and in a small community concept. And so when we talk about the development of far-flung roads at the very edges of our community, we really are looking at a completely different question, which is ultimately the City Council's responsibility to be far-viewing and to see, to think about things as they might appear 35 to 50 years from now. And we know from experience that all the communities in central Illinois are growing, and there are many new subdivisions that are being established in our community. The greatest amount of growth in Urbana is in the southeast right now. It is a very large concern for the city of Urbana concerning the tax base to have a variety of options for development. We know that we are doing quite well, or we're doing better in terms of residential development. And even the new buildings that are being built along South High Cross Road on 130 South, the Menard store and other stores that are coming through there in the that will be built include residential development as well. So these planners who have purchased this property, yes, along the highway there's going to be some big box construction, but they're also planning large tracts of residential. This is, you know, what you call, it's not really infill because it's farther out from the center of our city. When the post office, main post office was moved from downtown to out near Walmart, I refused to go out there for about 2.5 years to, you know, do my business out there because I thought this is just irrational. Why didn't they pick a site closer to town? Well, anymore, in about 10 years, that's not going to be so far out of town. There's going to be residential development all along that area, and we're going to be shopping along this, you know, at Menards and other stores that are built there. So the future is catching. We're rushing into our future, and to not really plan for some northern roads that connect to existing interchanges on I-57 is kind of short-sighted. We have to think more broadly than that. But my concern is when the project starts being planned actually, and we see the details, the engineering plans, we have to again come forward and talk about how are these roads fitting the community's needs, and are they handling, I mean, is there going to be passage under the bridges for wildlife in the riparian areas? Are there going to be wetlands to support you know, the flora and fauna that we enjoy in the countryside today? I have watched the development of the university's development and research park on South First Street because I banked at the credit union. Thanks, I forgot the name of the darn thing. I bank at the credit union. And I used to walk down there on my lunch break all the time, and I watched the transformation of the sheep pens and the lots where the horses used to gamble into, well, the iHotel and, you know, Yahoo.com and everything like that. And I kind of wondered, geez, you know, really the farmland is being pushed farther out, and we're getting this other development in here. And, well, do we complain about it? Actually, we're proud of the inventions and the development that happened in some of these areas where we've converted property. So there are good things and bad things about the process. Should the City Council not accept the CUAT's plan because there are problems facing us for the future development? I don't think we can. I don't think we have the right. We don't have the. It would be irresponsible of us to do that. Should more money come to infill development, perhaps intercity rails be recreated, I think that would be a smart use of transportation funds. And I would hope that because they're mentioned in here, they can be augmented and enhanced. And even though we do talk about development of these, of Olympian Drive and others, maybe it'll be that this drive will not be completed in 20 years. You know, I think the completion date for the first part is, you know, is like 10 to 15 years from here. And it could be that we'll find that the growth just hasn't occurred the same way we thought, and maybe this plan will be delayed and there'll be a time to, I don't know, absorb it in a different way. But to negate it right now would be, I think, short-sighted. I think we have an important responsibility to be far-sighted, very far-sighted, because population grows and the city's going to grow. So I guess I would support it, but I really appreciate Brandon and Charlie having suggested the amendments that are on it, because I think they help focus on the things that are really important to this community and the people who are sitting in front of us today. And I hope that you'll come back again to talk about what's going to happen when it does happen.
David Gehrig?
I think this is probably going to be a little bit brief because I haven't got much voice. But a lot of people have spent a lot of time to come by and hear, and through mail and through the letters to the paper and that sort of thing, to express what they think and what they feel about the Olympia Drive project. And that means that in return, I really appreciate that. I really think that it's important in helping us make our decision. And in response, it's sort of my duty to explain why I'm going to vote the way that I will. I will vote to support the long-range plan, not because I'm happy about it, but because I think in balance that's the better thing to do. The hardest votes aren't the one where you have to choose one bad thing versus another bad thing, or one good thing versus another good thing, although I'd love one of those every now and then. The hardest ones are when you're voting on a known pain against an unknown gain. And I think that this is a case of that. That the benefits for the city, I wish I could hold up a chart and say this is exactly what's going to happen, but we don't have that chart. We don't know exactly how it's going to unfold. But I believe that what will come of it, even if I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be and pin it down to this many jobs, it will be jobs. This many benefits for the city, it will be benefits for the city. This increase to the tax base, I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, but it will be. And that makes it a difficult vote to make, because on the other hand, the other side has been made very clear in our conversations, is that there are some very specific, there's a very specific downside to this. Having stood with you out on this lovely farm, hearing the crickets at night, it's not something that I'm at all blasé about saying, oh, well, that doesn't matter, let's just wipe it out. But in the end, I believe that the future gain is going to be what will outweigh the present cost. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Robert Lewis.
I just want to say thanks to all of that come and the visits we've had over the last few months in terms of getting input from the various people on this process. And it is a process that we're going through. So many times we go through processes like these, and oftentimes those folks that are affected the most don't really get their voices heard. And I think this is an opportunity to have your voice heard. In a small way, it has been in the amendments that were made. But I would encourage you in the future to be more vigilant in your requests for the things that you feel that are very, very important to you. And I think that's how change comes. And I think those folks that are afraid of change, they'll be back in the wings. But those that stand their ground and strive for those things that are important to them, it will come out in the end. So, in our way of approaching this, I've seen long-range plans, and I've been a part of them. We're going to see it again in 5 years. I hope you'll back again when it comes up again, and as it comes to fruition, hopefully those things that you've incorporated in your thinking, the things that have been incorporated are part of your thinking as well. And I hope that those people that view this at the higher levels will recognize that and make the necessary changes they do make in these kinds of planning processes. And I just want to say thank you for coming.
Okay, we have an amendment to the resolution. It was handed out by Brandon. I think there was only one change, that was deleting the word blanket from the third paragraph from the end. Is there anything else? Any other discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, now we will vote on the original motion as amended. It was a motion by Lewis, seconded by Stevenson. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, report of standing committees. That would be Dennis Roberts.
Yeah. I'm reporting the activities of the Committee of the Whole that met on December 14th, and a series of ordinances and resolutions were forwarded to the City Council for consideration, and I'm going to go through those lists and read them. First, ordinance number 2009-12-123. An ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code, prohibiting...
Could the audience please go out in the hall to talk, please? We're trying to finish this meeting. Dear people, could you please go out in the hall to talk?
Hello.
Hello? Could you guys go out in the hallway to finish your conversations? Thank you.
Okay.
We have to wait.
All right, I'll continue then.
Okay.
So we were talking about the first ordinance, 2009-12-123, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code, prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets, mainly Divisions Avenue and Stebbins Drive. On behalf of the committee, I move its adoption.
Second.
Okay, motion by Roberts, seconded by Lewis. Any further discussion? If not, would the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Bowersox?
Yes.
Garrick? Lewis?
Yes.
Marlin?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Smythe?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts.
Ordinance number 2009-12-125, an ordinance approving further modifications to the City of Urbana and the Urbana, Champaign, and Champaign County Home Consortium for the fiscal year 2008-2009 and fiscal year 2009-2010 annual action plans. And for the committee, I move its approval.
Second.
Motion by Roberts, seconded by Marlin. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Bowersox?
Yes.
Garrick? Lewis?
Yes.
Marlin?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Smythe?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
That motion carries. Roberts.
Next, we have ordinance number 2009-12-126, an ordinance approving the authorizing a second amendment to the Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement. This is with Ecological Construction Laboratory Super Energy Efficient Home for the fiscal year 2007-2008, and for the committee, I move its approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Roberts, seconded by Lewis. Any further discussion?
I just wanted to mention that we did encourage, well, we did have a good discussion about making these homes more energy efficient is great, but also considering the cost of these homes, we're hoping that they will find a way of reducing the square footage cost for construction in the future.
Okay. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Bowersox?
Yes.
Garrick? Lewis?
Yes.
Marlin?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Smythe?
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Roberts.
Yes. The next item is resolution number 2009-12-038R, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a certification of consistency for the Housing Authority of Champaign County 5-year plan for the fiscal year 2010 to 2014 and the annual plan for the fiscal year 2010, and I move its approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Roberts, seconded by Smythe. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, next we have ordinance number 2009-12-127, an ordinance approving the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice for the city of Urbana for the fiscal year 2009-2010, and for the committee, I move its approval.
Second.
Motion by Roberts, seconded by Marlin. Any other discussion?
I just wanted,
Everyone lifted up their paper at the same time. I think
right,
that
there was a slight wording change on page, old page 40, new page 38, which was distributed to the committee, and this ordinance is now incorporating that slight wording change.
Okay. That was voted on at the committee, right?
I think that this change came since a discussion from that conversation of approval.
All right, but you're including it?
I'm including the new wording.
All right. Any other discussion?
And it's highlighted in yellow on the sheets.
John Schneider's here to discuss that.
In addition to that change, the reason that that was on page 38 was because we reduced some of the information included in the executive summary that was repeated in the document itself and made some other minor editorial changes.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
It's a resolution.
Oh, I thought it was an ordinance. Ordinance number.
This one's an ordinance.
We're down to
E.
We're down to E.
Ordinance
Yeah.
E.
Okay, gotcha.
Council members Bowersox,
Yes.
Garrick,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe,
Yes.
Stevenson.
yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Roberts.
Okay, the final ordinance that we have consideration tonight is ordinance number 2009-12-122, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Article 4 of the Urbana City Code by adding a new section 20-48, creating a modular news rack district in the courthouse block. And for the committee, I move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Roberts, seconded by Lewis. Any other discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Bowersox.
Yes.
Garrick,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe, Stevenson.
That motion carries. Reports, special committees. I don't believe we have any. Reports of officers. Is there anyone who'd like to report for officers? Well, I will report. 2 weeks ago, we had a SWAT team called out, and I think our law enforcement people, our police department, in cooperation with other units of government from other cities, did an outstanding job. No shots were fired. They just waited it out and did the right thing, and they captured the individual that was apparently causing the trouble. Then some very good news. The Urbana High School has been recognized as one of the top high schools in the United States, and I think that's really impressive. I've written a letter to Dr. Laura Taylor, the principal, congratulating them. I think they faced the problems of educating kids that have some problems in school, and they just met it head on, and they dealt with these things very creatively, and it's a great pleasure to see them acknowledged for all the hard work they've put in. Anyone else? David Garrick.
Just asking, who was that recognition from?
Now you stumped me. I'd have to look it up. It was an organization that ranks It was reported in the News Gazette, but I don't have that article with me. But it was looking at all the schools in the country, and they ranked them on how they dealt with kids who were maybe at an educational disadvantage. Next time, you have to ask in advance. Anyone else want to give a report of officers? Okay, we'll move on. New business, ordinance number 2009-12-128, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of an annexation agreement for 2209 East Perkins Road with James E. Tull Sr., and I believe Robert Myers is here for that.
Hi, this would be an annexation agreement for 1.6 acres. This stretch of Perkins Road is that area between I-74 and High Cross Road. And that part of Perkins Road already exists. There's already homes along there. There's a township building maintenance building that's located along there, and it's kind of a semi-rural nature. Scott Plunk is working with James R. Toll, the current property owner, to purchase this land, and to Mr. Plunk's plans are to remove a dilapidated house currently on the property and replace it with another house. It's not possible out in the county because of the current zoning and the minimum lot width requirements, and has approached the city about annexing into the city and rebuilding under the city's jurisdiction. And we're open to facilitating that request. As part of that, he would like to know, the new property owner would like to know what his obligations are and responsibilities, and the best way to do that is through the annexation agreement. So that's what's here before you tonight. The property currently is already contiguous, so should this annexation agreement be approved, the property should be annexed shortly, probably within about a month from now. The Plan Commission recommended 4 votes in favor and 1 against for approval, and city staff likewise recommends approval.
Brandon?
I would move approval.
Second.
Motion by Bowersox, seconded by Stevenson. Mr. Bowersox.
And I guess I could just speak to it, and then I'm really curious to hear what other folks have to say, too. I understand the split vote at Plan Commission. I support this because I agree with, I think, what Chair Pollack said. In asking ourselves whether this is a worthy annexation and rezoning and variance, we have to just stick with the zoning categories, the criteria, and not the exact specifics of how this particular possible buyer plans to build this particular house. We really have to think, well, this is going to be R1, it's going to have these specific variances. Anything that is allowed by right and with these variances could end up getting built there. You know, you have to zone for anything that might be possible under that zoning category that we're designating it as. So for me, when I, dismiss the specifics of the particular house and instead look at the criteria and the zoning change and the variance, I think it meets the merits, and I support it.
Dennis Roberts.
Robert, I wonder if you, just looking at the annexation map for the property, it looks like the red line goes right down the middle of a very narrow property margin. Can you explain kind of how that property, is it being straddled, is that being acquired, is that two properties being joined together?
Sure. I can answer that. I should have probably mentioned also that Mr. Scott Plunk is in the audience and also the attorney for Mr. Tull. So if you have any specific questions, I may have to rely on their help. But in terms of the line that you're referring to, in addition to the annexation petition, the current property owner working with the new property owner will also be fixing what's now an ambiguous property line. There's a 50-foot strip that would be deeded back to this property that was incorrectly part of a deed filed several years ago. And so this would be corrected through a subdivision plat that would go hand in hand with the annexation agreement. Because it's a minor plat, it can be reviewed by city staff and reviewed and approved administratively. So that's all part of the process of getting the property under to meet as many rules as possible when it's brought into the city in terms of the building codes and subdivision plating requirements. And also for the one question where we know that the new property owner would vary from our standards, he's properly asked for a variance rather than bringing it in the city and then determining later that what he wants to do is not going to work. He's rightly asked the questions in advance.
Okay.
Diane?
I understand that this meets the criteria for annexation, and Libby answered actually a number of questions today, but I kept looking at this and wondering what the long-term plan for this area is. Bringing this one property into the city means it's the only property on this stretch of Perkin Roads that is now in the city. So when you talk about providing fire service or police service or even just where does this fit in the long-term plan for this area? Because it just sort of, at the moment, it's going to stick up there like a sore thumb, and what it's contiguous to is not actually residential property. It looks like it's wooded property. So just, can you explain how this all will work as we go down the road?
Yes. I didn't know if Charlie wanted to
Charlie,
answer the
did you
question.
want to say something first?
Well, it's along the same lines, and it sort of needs Chief Dilly right behind you to answer, which is how long is it going to take a fire truck to get here? And are we prepared to cover? This is the beginning of covering. We already have to cover two apartments out on East Airport Road. So
we already respond to a property on Perkins Road Extended, which is approximately the same distance from this particular property. My question initially was, could they provide water, which when talking to Bill Gray, there was already water on the site. So it wouldn't cause any undue problems for us to respond to that particular property. I'd say within 5 minutes.
If I could answer the question about future plans, we always looked at the 2005 comprehensive plan, and rural residential is the designation in the comprehensive plan for the future land use. And that was very carefully thought out, including input from residents in the area, both inside and outside the city. In fact, Mr. George Boyd, I think, who was speaking earlier tonight, played a role in planning for this area as well. But basically, we want to preserve the rural character, but also recognizing that there are some needs for less intense future development. And what we're looking at is what we're calling rural residential. That would be probably larger lots with single residences on them. And we'd like to find a way to also help preserve existing tree stands and natural areas as part of that. But there's going to be some development, but we want to limit it. That's our future vision.
Okay, any other questions on this? That was a motion by Bowersox, seconded by Stevenson, is that correct? Okay, if there are no further questions, would the clerk please call the roll?
Council members Bowersox,
Yes.
Garrick,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Marlin,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
Smythe, Stevenson, Mayor Pressing.
Yes. That motion carries. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Oh, David, sorry.
I've been informed that the recognition of Urbana High School was from U.S. News and World Report.
That is very good. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, no further business. This meeting is adjourned. Oh, yes. We will see you.
And a Merry Christmas to you all.
We will see you, I believe, on January 11th. Is that correct? No, it's, we're not.